My name's Will, I'm a werewolf. Currently I am incarcerated, so I'm sending these stories out when I can. Got taken by the police, kinda let them, to be honest, but if you could subscribe, that would be wonderful, and you may be able to win this art piece, Be Positive, made by my own fair hands when it gets it's kind of been taken by, Louis sent it to the police along with the PlayStation 5 that I sent, but I thought that would have been a great piece of artwork for your competition, but never mind. So along with that, I sent a PlayStation 5, and if you subscribe, there is a chance to win that on the 20th of October. We're going to pull one subscriber out of the hat, apparently, and they are going to be able to win at least a PlayStation 5. So please subscribe. Now I'm going to continue with my story. This is the second part of me being captured by the police, taken into prison. So here we go. I hope you enjoy it. I was rushed into a local police station where they put me in, I believe they call it a can, with 8 gangbangers. I think that's what you call them. I'd seen it on telly or something. Apparently the police told me they were all locals and from one of the toughest mobs that ran the area. Yawn. I think the authorities wanted to put the middle-class white boy in the cell to get a kicking and maybe more. I sat on the bench, showing no reason for them to be pissed. But this was an opportunity for these gangbangers not to be missed. Obviously, the police had kind of given the all clear to have some fun with me. Well, they probably had not said anything, but created a scenario in which bad things could happen to me. I mean, I had a reputation for killing quite a few people and children and stuff, and that tends to piss the police off. The posit was not being respectful towards them as he wandered around the cell and took the general piss out of these big, hard men. He could not get over the fact that all their pants were kind of around their thighs, showing their asses. In contrast, I was there in a shirt and chinos. Okay, slightly bloodied and damaged, but still slightly out of character with my new chums. We were very different. Deposit, my werewolf soul, was desperately trying to get me to laugh so that I would get in trouble. He's a bit of a dick like that every now and again. With his antics and impressions of those in the cell, I could not help it. I'm broke. I always found his antics very amusing, which gave them some reason to start some shit with the silly older man in the corner. Eventually, because of Fern, I began to laugh out loud, LOL as you young people say. The gang was getting a little annoyed at the look of comfortable mirth and began to talk amongst themselves. I could smell young men's discomfort at my behaviour. Was I not meant to be a snivelling ball of fear in the corner? I should not be laughing and seemingly enjoying myself as they did their combined group intimidation thing. I'd already worked out the social order of the group that sat across from me. Who was the leader, who were the thinkers, and of course, who were the thugs. One of them was eventually volunteered to make a move for the group. He came wandering over in his baseball vest with an obvious 69 as the logo. His jeans hung at the bottom of his arse cheeks, which seemed to make his walking a little more difficult, to be honest. He had that intimidating walk of the young man from all around the world. He strutted his way towards me, swinging his arms away from his body, holding his arms out as though he was holding 2 rolled-up carpets. He was fucking hilarious to watch as he bobbed up and down with every step. But what was really funny was that the posit was strutting exactly like him by him. He was actually up on his back legs with his front legs swinging. Fen, for a wolf, was doing a very accurate copy of Thug's scary face. The boy must have thought the fact that he was pulling that face, he must have thought he looked like a hardened killer or something. I was laughing at both posit and man because to me, they looked like they were really desperate for a shit, or straining for one. That was it, I lost it. I was breaking into laughter and crying at the man and the posit's actions. "Hey, bruv, what you finding so funny? You laughing at us, blood?" he said, pointing to his crew. Fen was still ripping into him, doing a perfect mimic, and I was desperately trying not to laugh, but sometimes it just gets too much. Hey, who cares, I thought. I was laughing at the fucking stupid way that you have your jeans, blood. I've never seen anything as silly as that in my life. This upset the big posturing youth, and he was a very big, sort of spotty white boy. He obviously was trying to impress his pals as well. "It's funny, is it, man?" he asked me. "You find me funny, disrespecting me in front of my brothers?" He said, pointing to the rest of his crew. I leant forward and stopped laughing. My face became very serious very quickly. "Yes, I am laughing at you because you look and appear to be a very stupid man." And then I smiled at him. The youth physically deflated at this. He did not expect me to actually offer any kind of resistance. He turned towards his friends for some support and they waved him on while the leader sucked his teeth at him. He turned back towards me now, a little nervous. "I think I'd be having your shoes, man. They look my style, man," he laughed. "If I was a granddad, that is." He did the shaky finger thing, that thing where they shake the hands and the fingers click. I don't know what it is. I used to really think it was cool when I was 15, while getting laughs from the others behind him. I looked down at my once beautiful brown boots and sighed. That somewhat hurt my feelings. These are Lokes, and although they looked a bit weird with no laces, they are a classic style. So I looked back at him. Then he played his cards a little early. He could have tried to play the intimidating game a little longer. But no, he went right into the threat of violence. I was so disappointed. It could have been so much more fun. "Not laughing now, are yous? I think I'm going to slap you up, innit?" he now tells me. "Yes, bruv," says another man from the other end of the cell. "Slap him about, innit?" Young people's vocabulary these days, it is fucking terrible. What are they teaching them in these schools? Do they not do enough reading or writing or something? He took a little too long to make his first move. I could sense the nerves were almost getting the better of him. He had to do this now to prove his worth, and out of nowhere, he went to slap me as I sat there. That is just so ungentlemanly. He never even gave me the opportunity to stand and defend myself. What a dick. As his right hand came flying towards my head, I caught it with my right hand just before it made contact with my face. I stopped it dead in the air and looked up at that moment and made eye contact with the man. It was at that point I saw his face change as he realised that he'd fucked up. "Yo, blood, have this," I said to him as I dragged his wrist directly down, dragging the man down towards me, pulling him off balance. He fell headfirst towards me and I sprang upwards in response, my hairline connecting with his jaw, hitting it full force. My reward was the wonderful feeling of the jaw and lower half of his skull deforming around my forehead as I took my head literally into his. He flew backwards off his feet with the force of my headbutt. I had a moment of artistic joy as teeth and bits of bone came tearing through his face, the skin ripping apart and falling away. I love these moments of slow motion where the droplets of blood and shattered bits fly in the air, eventually dropping to the floor. Not in a random pattern, but a pattern dictated by little bits of physics. Floppy flaps of skin hung around that now deconstructed jaw. Pure artwork. From the upward movement and strike, he was lifted off his feet and flew in the opposite direction. He continued to fall back, and when he was almost lying horizontal to the floor, I yanked his wrist towards me again, getting a lovely popping sound as the shoulder dislocated, and getting him in response to the force to start moving upwards towards me once again. As he came back to vertical with his feet off the floor, I added a right round kick through his body. My shin hit his pelvis and crushed it in one blow. I felt it smash and break into a million pieces as my shin exploded into it. It was now shattered and would never be of any use again in the unlikely event of him surviving this assault. The destruction made me smile deep inside. The kick was a very nice blast with lots of power, which now sent the body flying to my left, where it collided with the bars before hitting the floor. It was all over in a few milliseconds. The man was still alive, but I was unsure of how long he would be. His body was all sorts of shapes that it should not be, and his breath was somewhat hindered and bubbly due to the state of his mouth and throat. He was now a jigsaw of broken bones, held together somewhat insecurely in a torn and twisted bag of skin. That would take a lot of quick work and brilliant problem solving by some fantastic surgeons to put him together again. I now bowed to my attentive audience. Every eye was on me, and I pointed at them and smiled, dusted off my legs, and I sat back down before them, spreading myself into the seat, legs wide and oozing my usual brutal confidence. One of the brave members of the gang slowly moved towards the now cooling body. I could sense that this guy was dead. He had gurgled a little bit, but dead people sometimes do. The guys making their move to the body were pretty knowledgeable, as two of them moved towards me, forward to screen a third who moved to check out the condition of their friend. They had some idea of how to work as a unit. "He's fucking dead," I told them and laughed once more. "You guys should now stay in your side of the cell, and I will stay in mine." Strange how none of our most helpful policemen have come rushing in to our aid. Your aid. Surprisingly, they all kept their eyes on me but sat back down on the bench. That I did not expect. I expected them to rush me. If they did attack, it would not go well for them. But I hate not being able to work out the thoughts of the sheep before me. Still, no police entered the room when I would have expected them to be here in vast numbers. This was a definite setup by someone. I was going to turn this now into a fun afternoon. Little did the setter-uppers know that they only fed the beast. I considered with my vast intellect whether or not they were doing this on purpose, but for maybe another reason. Maybe they were trying to make me kill more people to get me deeper in shit. Wow, this could all really be a setup. Once more I smiled and laughed. "Who cares?" I said out loud. Fen and I giggled as we sat, considering what would happen in the next few minutes. They had no idea that it really did not matter what they did. I had a lot in reserve if that shit hit the fan. Well, they were trying to fuck around with me, then I would really fuck around with them. I stood up and removed my shirt, letting my prey see my perfect body. As I did so, I started to talk under my breath, just about in the audibility of the gang. "I don't believe this, Fen. I don't believe this, Fen. They want me to kill these fuckers. I think these guys are going to attack me, so I might as well do them first. Hey, Fen. I might as well do them first." Fen, who was invisible, was now laughing at the discomfort of the men as they started to realise that the guy before them was actually maybe a complete fucking psycho. "Look at them, Will. They're now shitting it. It is a new feeling for these men. I love it when they're scared, these hard guys. Breaking the tough guys is so much fun." Raising my voice now to somewhat of an oratory level, making sure the gentleman in the red corner could hear me, I began to reply to my posit. "Well, if they don't think that I'm going to respond to this madness, then they're wrong, Fen. Who the fuck do they think they are? They're going to try and get me in trouble by making me kill these fuckers, and I do not really feel like I have any choice in doing this. I have to kill these fuckers." Fen was laughing in his big wolfy way, rolling around on the floor. The reaction of the men across from the cell, well, they were literally trying to get their respective backs out of the cell through the bars. They started to turn into the upset monkeys that you find deep in your mind. They now became angry and scared wild animals, asking questions of me. "Who the fuck are you, madam? Who are you fucking talking to?" And such like. None of the human parts of them made sense anymore. They began yelling for help and banging at the walls and shaking the bars of the cage. These toughened, killer criminals were begging for help from the fucking police that they hated. It was amazing to see all the different reactions of the creatures that now inhabited the cell with me. The crying, the angry, the lost, the silent, the broken, all trying to cope with a very bizarre set of circumstances. I continued with my purposeful warm-up, a few jumping jacks and a couple of hamstring stretches. Once prepared, I ran forward into now what was a braying herd. They did not even really fight back. They just got slaughtered like the prey they were. I didn't even have to become a fucking werewolf. I got all but one before the CCTV noise and the gore brought the police station to my cell. I think they must have been watching on CCTV, hoping that the gang would sort me out. But by the time they'd reacted, it was a little bit too late. I had torn them apart, ripped and smashed, pulverized, pounded the living flesh so the remains were impossible to discern one from another. To help the police, though, to get the body count right, I left a pile of heads in one corner and spread the other parts artistically around the cell. It was like bloody Christmas scene with guts and body parts as the decorative features. I had the last prisoner by his throat, holding him against the bars as I laughed and jiggled him around like a puppet. "Who is the fucking hard man now?" I asked him as I held him at arm's length. The guy was doing the usual boring shit of screaming for help and begging me for him. "Please leave me alone." I looked like the devil himself in my own mind and what was left of his, as I was covered in thick clotting blood and dripping with sweat and gore. As the officers arrived, I slowly squeezed the guy's throat until he went quiet and still. I felt the joy as my fingers sunk into his larynx and neck. They continued their compression and eventually tore into the blood vessels around the larynx, which burst, fountaining his blood onto and around my smiling, joyful face. Each time this happens is a joy. I never get used to it, and never get bored of this defining moment. As the police entered the room in which the cell sat, they were shouting shit at me. I was in bliss as the red fluid ran down my face and body, so I was not really listening. I was enjoying this moment as the so-called soul of my latest victim left its now destroyed vessel. Well, that would be the case if God fucking existed. As I lowered the dead man down to his knees, the first taser hit my body. I felt the electricity pulse through my body, and it brought me out of this blissful state with a frustrating jolt. I turned to the unfortunate man who had fired the first electro-awfulness as the juice came into my body and ripped the wires from my skin. This was somewhat an unexpected outcome for the police officer, and he was unprepared for my reaction. You fucking knobhead." Not my finest insult, I have to admit, but I was not feeling too clever at this time. The poor firer of the electrical insult was not prepared for what happened next. I covered the ground between us and grabbed the wrist of the weapon, that he held through the bars. It was a silly mistake from him, actually having it through the bars, and I used his arm to drag him to the bars of the holding cell very roughly. His body slammed into the bars where it stopped dead. Sadly for him, his limb did not stop and his arm tore and dislocated at the shoulder. He obviously worked out, so it took several hard wrenches to get it clear from the man's body. This was going to be awesome so far. The only additional fun that could be added would be if Fen would come out and play, if we could be in a werewolf form. But Fen wasn't having it. It was too dangerous, he said. Although I really didn't need him at the moment, things were going particularly swimmingly. More tasers now hit me as I dropped the arm and grabbed and tore the head from the corpse that I was carrying in my other hand. After it was removed from the brainstem, I pushed my fist up inside the skull, forcing out the brain material as it entered. The eyes of the head bulged from the pressure, and I heard some pops of tissue as the skull's contents squirted from its nostrils. It stole my interest from what was going on in the rest of the room. I now had all my focus on the newly acquired squirty toy. Sometimes I'm just a puppy with a new gift. It's terrible. The electrical shocks started to get a bit distracting, so on the other hand, I pulled the pointless taser strikes from my skin. I now turned the new glove puppet hand to the police. "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him." Well, not in the fucking slightest, to be honest. I laughed and smiled at the perplexed police. They had no fucking sense of humour. With the police in the epileptic state of not knowing what the fuck to do, they could only watch and have to wait for the firearms team to arrive. They could do nothing as I scooped out a knife from an orbital with a finger, grabbing the slippy sphere from the skull and tearing it from the musculature of the eyes. "Mama, if you could only see me now," I screamed at the crowd. An audience to my violence was an appreciated rarity, and I popped the eyeball into my mouth and bit it. It burst with an audible pop, and I spat the contents at the audience like some 80s punk frontman. This was so much fucking fun. How much PTSD could I cause in one moment? Just when they thought the horror and gore show could not get any more substantial, I ended the beautiful memory-making moment by throwing the head at the bars as hard as I could, where it exploded, covering the cowering cunts behind it with lovely bits of brain. As the disgust and horror were sinking into my new friends' heads, I made my way to the back of the cell, and using the bloody brain-covered hand, I wrote my plea. "Not guilty." Eventually, the firearms team arrived and the police officer came forward with his pistol, not pushing it through the bars. He wasn't stupid, and he gave me a warning. Get on the floor. There was no way I was going to do that. The floor was fucking disgusting and swimming in blood, and to be honest, I didn't want to. I can be a bit of an arse when I want to be. Get on the floor now, was ordered once more. I smiled and walked back to the bench, sitting down and resting my hands behind my head. Fen, who had sat in awe of all this entertainment, now started to giggle like a small child. I joined in with Fen, turning the little giggles into heartfelt guffaws that this moment really deserved. As this mirth was shared between us, the police slowly went through their frightened systems to come and get me under control. Well, what they thought was laughing their control. This was chapter 2 of Captured by the Police. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to win a PlayStation 5 on October the 20th, which of course is a full moon. You can win it. Here's the website for more information. Other than that, this is your werewolf signing out. Goodbye.